Hey there, curious minds. Do you ever find yourself working harder, yet feeling like you're maybe falling further behind?
Mm-hmm.
Like life's just a little more complicated these days,
Yeah.
more expensive,
Yeah.
and perhaps, I don't know, less fundamentally fulfilling than it once seemed.
A lot of people feel that way, I think.
Many of us share that persistent, nagging feeling. And what if there was a fundamental, almost invisible force at play, quietly influencing nearly every aspect of our modern world?
That's a big question.
It is. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into some truly thought-provoking material shared by one of our listeners. Jimmy Song's book, Fiat Ruins Everything, How Our Financial System is Rigged and How Bitcoin Fixes It.
Quite a title.
It is. Song offers a candid, maybe even unapologetic perspective on the modern world. He makes a stark case for how our current monetary system impacts almost every facet of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's important to remember, we're here to explore Song's bold thesis and unpack his arguments. We're not endorsing them, necessarily.
Bro, just understanding the viewpoint.
Exactly. Understanding his viewpoint on how deep these connections, as he sees them, actually run.
And what's truly fascinating here is how Song doesn't just critique economic policy.
Right.
Instead, he meticulously connects what he calls fiat money. That's government-issued currency not backed by a physical commodity, like gold.
Right. The money we all use day to day.
Exactly. He connects that to an incredibly wide range of societal aspects, everything from the quality of our personal relationships to the very pace of scientific innovation. He argues the consequences are far more pervasive and, well, personal than you might initially imagine.
So our mission today is to unpack Song's powerful arguments. We'll explore his claim that, in his view, you are being stolen from.
Strong words.
Very. And how fiat money, according to his thesis, degrades civilization, steals dreams, and replaces meaning. We'll look at the mechanisms he proposes, the surprising ripple effects he identifies.
And the alternative, he champions.
And then, crucially, the alternative he champions. So prepare to dig in, because we're about to explore the root of why, as Song puts it, your life is getting worse and you are paying for someone else's excess.
Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, so let's unpack this central idea. Song kicks off by asserting that fiat money, controlled by central banks, well, it isn't just an obscure economic concept.
No, he frames it much more dramatically.
He frames it as a monopolistic dominion that is actively, and in his view, systematically, stealing from you.
Yeah.
He contends this is the direct consequence of central planning of money, rather than a free market system producing it.
Right.
So how does he argue this theft actually manifests? What does it mean for our everyday finances?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Song describes the constant expansion of the fiat currency supply, not just as a subtle economic shift, but as a systematic theft of wealth from savers. It's also, he posits, an inhibitor. It stops them or makes it harder to create new wealth. He paints this picture where new sources of income become harder to generate at the same time they are becoming more widely demanded.
That feels familiar.
He points to statistics like the M2 money supply. That's a broad measure, cash, checking, savings, which has just skyrocketed. From $289 billion in 1959 to over $21 trillion in 2023.
Wow, that's a huge increase.
It's massive. Song calculates this as roughly a 7% annual debasement of your money. Essentially, he argues, it's a silent tax.
A tax? How so?
It erodes your purchasing power year after year. It just makes fiat a terrible store of value because its supply is constantly being inflated by central authorities. It loses value over time.
That's a powerful and concerning statistic, that 7% figure. So if our money is constantly losing value, you might be thinking, okay, what are the visible signs of this happening in the world around us? Song doesn't just stop at economic theory, does he? He points to a host of everyday observations that he believes are direct symptoms of this fiat system.
Exactly. He brings it down to earth.
What are some of those most striking observations he highlights?
Well, he directs our attention to things we probably all notice. The rising cost of living, obviously. The widening income gap, the perceived decline in product quality. Things just don't seem to last as long, maybe?
Right. Planned obsolescence or just cheaper materials?
Could be both. Regulations becoming increasingly cumbersome, institutions feeling unstable.
Okay.
And then Song asks this really provocative question. Where are the moon bases and Mars missions we once dreamed of? Why do economic crises occur so frequently? His core insight here is that when money is constantly losing value and its supply is centrally controlled, Well, the incentive shifts.
Shifts from what to what?
From long-term, ambitious, high-risk projects like genuine space exploration or, say, big advances in nuclear power.
The really hard stuff.
Yeah, the hard stuff. It shifts towards short-term, often politically motivated endeavors that don't require true breakthrough innovation.
Because those are safer bets in an unstable system.
Perhaps easier to get funded if you're close to the money source. He argues that civilization hasn't progressed significantly in 50 years. If anything, he suggests, it's slowed down.
Seriously. Since when?
He kind of pins it to peaking in 1969 with the moon landing, and he puts the blame squarely on fiat money as the cause.
That's a massive claim. Our monetary system is holding back humanity's progress. So if fiat money is indeed behind all this, how does Song explain the actual mechanics, the how of it doing all this damage?
Okay.
He introduces a concept called rent-seeking. Can you break down what that means and how fiat money specifically enables or incentivizes it?
Sure. So rent-seeking, as Song describes it, is basically a situation where individuals or entities profit by manipulating the economic environment around them, rather than by creating new wealth or providing genuine value. Think lobbying, exploiting regulations, that kind of thing.
Not building a better mousetrap, but maybe getting a subsidy for your existing mousetrap company.
Exactly. Or getting a regulation passed that hurts your competitor. He argues that fiat money, because it's centrally controlled and easily printed, creates just ample opportunities for these actors to capture value without actually producing it. He gives examples like government procurement bureaucrats may be prioritizing their own interests or connections over getting the best value. Or investment bankers retaining massive profits but then getting bailed out by taxpayers when their bets go wrong.
The too big to fail idea.
Precisely. These are people, in Song's view, spending other people's money for other people's gain, lacking the incentive to trade efficiently because they're not operating with their own skin in the game.
So it disconnects risk and reward.
Very much so. He says many jobs in a fiat society have a significant rent-seeking component, often proportional to how involved they are in politics.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Song highlights a phenomenon known as the Cantillon effect. Could you explain what that is and why it's so central to his argument about who truly benefits from this system?
Yes, the Cantillon effect is crucial to his whole thesis. It basically describes how, when new money is created, well, it doesn't spread evenly or instantly through the economy.
Okay, so it enters at specific points.
Exactly. Those who get access to the new money first benefit the most. Think about it. If the government prints a new batch of money, the first people or institutions to receive it.
Banks, government contractors, maybe?
Often, yes. They can spend it on goods and services at the old existing prices.
Before inflation kicks in.
Precisely. By the time that new money filters down through the economy, prices have already begun to rise because there's more money chasing the same amount of goods.
So the people who get it last?
They have less purchasing power. Their slice of the pie is effectively smaller. Song argues this phenomena, that access to the money printer is the ultimate prize, is why the rich often get richer without adding any value.
It's about proximity to the source.
It makes everything money touches inherently political. Politically savvy companies, he argues, often outperform those that produce superior products, simply because they know how to position themselves to receive that newly printed money.
So if access to newly printed money is the ultimate prize, it sounds like genuine innovation would suffer, wouldn't it?
That's exactly his point.
How does Song argue this politicization, driven by fiat, fundamentally hinders real progress?
Well, he contends that politically savvy incumbents, the established players who know how to work the system, they enjoy a substantial advantage over newer, maybe better products or ideas.
How?
They can leverage regulatory barriers, get rules written that favor them. They can receive subsidies that new entrants can't get, or they can simply acquire promising disruptors and shut them down or absorb them.
Right, kill the competition.
He vividly calls these entities corporate zombies.
Huh.
Companies that maintain their existence by devouring progress and innovation, they survive not because they're the best, but because they're politically connected.
Can you give an example he uses?
He illustrates this by pointing out how, weirdly, aviation travel times are often slower now than decades ago, or that dishwashers can take longer to run a cycle than they did 50 years ago. Minor things, maybe, but indicative.
Suggesting stagnation where there should be progress.
Exactly. His insight is that the incentive structure under fiat leads to a stifling of genuine, ambitious innovation. We should have advanced nuclear power technology widely available by now, he might argue.
But we don't.
But it's held back maybe by excessive regulation or political opposition, while perhaps less efficient technologies like wind and solar receive government support, maybe because they are politically popular despite their own drawbacks.
So the focus shifts from what truly works best
to what is politically expedient or profitable through rent-seeking.
Okay, it's one thing is talk about economics in these large systems.
Yeah.
But Song's most striking claims, perhaps, are how deeply these monetary policies and the incentives they create seep into our personal lives, how they shape what we find meaningful. He suggests fiat money has a corrosive effect on what would otherwise be meaningful aspects of life. How does he make that leap? It seems like a big jump.
It does, but he connects it through this idea of time preference. He argues that traditionally, meaning often came from long-term things, family, community, maybe religion, building a legacy for the future, things that require patience and investment.
Okay, long-term thinking.
Right. But fiat, by constantly devaluing savings and rewarding short-term gains or proximity to new money, promotes what he calls high time preference behavior.
Meaning?
Essentially prioritizing immediate gratification spending now, consuming now over long-term benefits and investments. Why save diligently if your savings lose value every year?
Right, the incentive is weaker.
So Song believes that these last bastions of meaning, like family and community, they still exist, of course, but they're getting debased, especially over the past 50 years or so, as these fiat incentives have really taken hold.
And within that high time preference framework, Song makes some very strong, I should say, very specific and potentially controversial claims about how our understanding of love, marriage, and family has been altered.
He does go there, yes.
What does he argue?
He argues that love itself has been cheapened, maybe from a virtue requiring sacrifice, commitment, and long-term effort, to something more like a fleeting emotion, like saying, I love ice cream. Just a feeling, not an action or a commitment.
Okay.
And marriage.
He specifically pinpoints the widespread adoption of no-fault divorce laws, starting around 1969 in California, as a crucial turning point.
How does he link that to fiat money?
His insight, or his argument at least, is that by enabling individuals to rely more on state-provided safety nets, which are ultimately funded by fiat money creation, the economic and social scaffolding that historically underpinned the commitment in marriage was subtly eroded.
So the state takes on roles the family or community might have. Potentially, yes. He argues this made legal shifts like no-fault divorce more palatable and less economically devastating for individuals, essentially making all marriages open from a legal standpoint with fewer legal repercussions for breaking that commitment.
That's a provocative connection.
It is. And he connects this, combined with what he sees as excessive government safety nets, to plummeting birth rates and a devaluing of motherhood.
How so?
He suggests children are increasingly viewed as economic liabilities under a fiat system, expensive drains on resources. Instead of perhaps historically being seen as assets, contributors to a family's future, or a source of long-term legacy and meaning. He even notes, quite starkly, that the act of raising children has been so devalued in some ways that creating new life is considered less important than, say, a rent-seeking desk job.
These are definitely challenging ideas he's putting forward. So if these fundamental institutions like family are affected, how does Song then describe the quality of our everyday relationships and interactions in a fiat world?
Well, following that logic, the interference of authorities into what used to be purely bilateral relationships, combined with this short-term, high time preference focus, has, in Song's view, created more shallow, maybe even exploitative relationships.
No.
What does that look like? He points out that reputation, built over the long term, maybe matters less when short-term rent-seeking opportunities abound. Connections, being close to the new money source, can matter more than skill or genuine character.
So it becomes more transactional.
Perhaps. He observes how politics makes its unwelcome entry into even personal relationships, maybe fostering backstabbing or temporary alliances for gain rather than deep, lasting bonds built on trust. People, he suggests, often prefer to consume rather than create, choosing to, binge-watch Netflix or doom-scroll social media instead of harnessing their unique talents to provide lasting value, because the incentives for long-term creation are weakened or debased.
This shift in relationships and priorities, it seems like it would inevitably touch on our moral compass, our sense of right and wrong.
He argues it does.
How does Song define what he calls fiat morality?
This leads us to a really deeply concerning aspect he raises: fiat morality. He describes it as a set of values, much like fiat money itself, that are imposed top-down, often by elites or authorities. They change rapidly, sometimes contradictorily, and are enforced largely through social pressure, fear of being canceled, ostracized, losing your job, or social standing.
Can you give some examples he might use, again, just reporting his view?
He gives examples of what he perceives as fiat moral imperatives, things promoted as unquestionably good by media, academia, government, maybe like eating insect protein or living in tiny pods, or the idea of being happy owning nothing.
Things presented as progress or necessary sacrifices.
Exactly. Things promoted through what he sees as propaganda. His insight is that fiat, by giving a centralized authority control over resources, the money printer, also gives them immense power to dictate values and narratives.
And how does that contrast with other moral systems?
He argues this stands in stark contrast to something like natural law, which he sees as rooted in more universal, intuitive moral rules that tend to transcend cultures and time, don't steal, don't murder, etc., things discovered, not dictated.
And how does this top-down morality, in Song's view, impact what we believe as individuals and how we acquire knowledge? He talks about fiat knowledge and even nihilism.
Yeah, he argues that fiat money debases our beliefs. He suggests that people who become really successful in these Cantillon games, those who benefit most directly from the new money.
The insiders.
The insiders, yeah. They often lose connection to traditional beliefs or values, potentially becoming nihilists, believing in nothing firmly, maybe like Orwell's inner party leaders, who could just change their beliefs on demand to align with the authorities.
Okay, and for the rest of us?
For the rest of us, he thinks it fosters a trust, don't verify mentality, especially with what he calls fiat knowledge.
What's fiat knowledge?
Information, particularly coming from designated experts or official sources, that we're encouraged to accept without critical verification. Much like we're told to accept fiat money at face value, even though its value erodes. He cites psychological studies like the Solomon Asch conformity experiment.
The one of those lines.
Yeah, showing how easily people conform to a clearly false popular opinion rather than trusting their own eyes, their own verified knowledge. He argues the incentive under fiat is often to conform, to agree with the official narrative, rather than risk your social or economic standing by speaking a perceived inconvenient truth.
So this trust don't verify mentality and the broader shift in incentives, this even permeates the world of finance itself, creating what Song calls postmodern investing. What does he mean by that? It sounds very academic.
Yeah. In postmodern investing, Song observes the stock market, for example, acting in ways that seem irrational if you look at traditional fundamentals.
Like what?
Popularity, hype, speculation seem to drive prices, maybe more than things like profit, revenue, future cash flows, the stuff investors used to focus on.
Okay.
He references examples like, remember when Hertz stock soared even during bankruptcy proceedings?
Yeah, that was weird.
Or meme stocks like Dogecoin pumping to huge valuations with arguably no inherent value or utility.
So what's the connection to fiat?
His insight is that fiat's inherently inflationary nature and the constant liquidity injections from central banks warp traditional investment logic. When money is constantly being created out of thin air and everyone is trying to outrun its debasement,
you chase yield wherever you can find it.
Exactly. Fundamental realities can become secondary to attracting capital through sheer popularity, narrative, hype, or even political connections. Investing, in his view, morphs into a trading game.
Not about finding value, but about riding momentum.
Right. Where the goal is maybe just to be closer to the new money or to guess what the crowd will do next, not necessarily to identify and fund genuinely productive long-term ventures.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty comprehensive and, frankly, quite a bleak picture. Song paints of our modern world under the influence of fiat money.
It is quite critical, yes.
But he doesn't just leave us in despair, does he? He offers a silver lining, a beacon of hope in his view. Bitcoin.
That's the second half of the book's title, right? How Bitcoin fixes it.
Exactly. So how does Song argue that Bitcoin fundamentally rectifies these flawed incentives that he claims fiat has created? How does it supposedly reverse this decline he describes?
Song sees Bitcoin as the cure, essentially, because it fundamentally reintroduces sound money principles back into the world.
How so? What principles?
Its core properties, a fixed, absolutely predictable supply cap of 21 million coins.
Right. No more can be created beyond that.
None. Its decentralized nature, meaning no single entity controls it. And its immutability, meaning the rules can't easily be changed. These directly counter the problems he attributes to fiat.
So no central bank.
No central bank to print more Bitcoin out of thin air, which means, in his view, no Cantillon effect giving insiders an unfair advantage. No systematic debasement stealing from savers, and far, far fewer opportunities for that kind of political rent-seeking.
Because you can't lobby the Bitcoin code for favors.
Pretty much. Song argues this allows natural market forces' genuine supply and demand to operate effectively again. It forces individuals and institutions to create real value to succeed, rather than just seeking political advantage or manipulating the system.
So it's a path back to
a world based more on merit, self-sovereignty, and authentic progress, he believes, because the money itself is designed to be trustworthy and neutral.
You mentioned earlier how fiat, in Song's view, promotes a high time preference where immediate gratification takes precedence. How does Bitcoin specifically reorient individuals towards a low time preference? And what are the practical implications Song observes from this?
This is maybe one of the most compelling parts of his argument about Bitcoin's potential impact. Because Bitcoin is designed to be a reliably scarce and permissionless asset, anyone can hold it. And its supply won't be inflated away.
Right.
It inherently incentivizes saving and long-term planning. If you believe your money will hold or increase its value over time, you're more likely to save it.
Makes sense.
He notes, anecdotally perhaps, but observes that many people who get into Bitcoin start saving diligently, they plan more meticulously for the future, they might even scrutinize their diets more, get married, often choose to have children.
Really? He connects it that far?
He does. His insight is that when your money itself encourages you to think long-term, you're naturally incentivized to think in decades, not just days or weeks.
So that low time preference bleeds over.
It's about rediscovering our humanity, as he puts it. Focusing on long-term endeavors, fostering sacrifice, responsibility, commitment values he sees as eroded by fiat over just fleeting personal happiness or consumption.
So the stability of the money influences behavior across the board.
That's the idea. This low time preference behavior with money naturally extends to other aspects of life, offering potentially a deeper sense of purpose, particularly, he argues, in things like family formation and community building.
So if Bitcoin truly reverses these incentives as he claims, how does Song envision a world where innovation thrives again, where merit is rewarded over political connections, and those corporate zombies you mentioned are finally put to rest?
Well, Song argues that in a sound money environment, like one based on Bitcoin, the artificial life support that sustained those corporate zombies, things like easy bailouts, subsidies tied to political favor, regulatory capture, it simply disappears. Without easy access to freshly printed money or political favors being the key determinant of success.
Competition becomes real again?
Genuine competition and innovation based on creating real value would naturally flourish, he believes. Bitcoin, by taking the politics out of the base layer of money, creates a much more level playing field.
So success depends on...
Companies and individuals would succeed based more on their ability to actually serve customers well and innovate effectively, not just on their proximity to power or their lobbying budget. This, he believes, would usher in a new era of progress, unburdened by the stagnation he attributes to the fiat era.
And what about those deeper personal connections? The sense of meaning that Song argued fiat eroded? How does Bitcoin help restore purpose in relationships and community, in his view?
It builds on that idea of low time preference again. Song posits that Bitcoin fosters a return to values like sacrifice, commitment, and crucially, reputation.
Why reputation?
Because when you're thinking long-term and your interactions aren't just fleeting or transactional because the money holds value, investing in meaningful, lasting relationships becomes paramount. Your word, your reliability, they matter more.
Okay.
This, he believes, naturally strengthens family units and communities, as people are incentivized to build enduring bonds based on trust and mutual benefit, rather than temporary, potentially exploitative alliances driven by short-term gain.
So sound money leads to sounder relationships.
That's the connection he makes. He believes that with a sound monetary base, individuals are empowered to focus on building a real legacy, contributing to their community, and finding deep, authentic meaning through shared purpose and responsibility.
Rather than
the narcissistic self-indulgence he sometimes attributes to the high time preference culture fostered by fiat.
Okay, one last connection. If fiat debased our morality and made us susceptible to fiat knowledge, how does Bitcoin help us reclaim a truer sense of morality and our ability to discern truth, according to Song?
He argues that Bitcoin's very nature, decentralized, open, verifiable, inherently promotes personal sovereignty and critical thinking. The whole ethos in Bitcoin is often summed up as don't trust, verify. You don't have to trust an intermediary. You can verify transactions yourself on the blockchain.
Right.
When you are personally responsible for securing your own money, understanding how it works, you tend to extend that critical verification to other areas of your life. Information, beliefs, claims made by authorities.
You question more.
You're incentivized to question more, to verify for yourself. This, he suggests, fosters an environment where truth can emerge more organically, less influenced by top-down narratives or centrally imposed fiat moral imperatives.
So it encourages individual responsibility in thinking.
Yes. It encourages individuals to take responsibility for their own moral compass and for their own knowledge acquisition. Breaking free from the conformist pressures of fiat morality and fiat knowledge by reestablishing a foundation of verifiable truth, starting, fundamentally, with the money itself.
It all comes back to the money for him.
It really does. Ultimately, Song's core argument is that fiat money, by its very nature, its ability to be printed endlessly and controlled centrally, acts almost like a cancer.
Wow.
Infiltrating every facet of our lives, from the deeply personal to the broadly global, eroding meaning, incentivizing that rent-seeking behavior, and leading, in his view, to widespread stagnation.
And Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, conversely, is presented as the cure, the potential antidote that brings us back to sound money principles, fostering a society based more on merit, personal responsibility, and the creation of genuine value. It's a fundamental shift in incentives that, in his view, offers a clear path to reversing the perceived decline of civilization.
This deep dive into Jimmy Song's Fiat Ruins Everything certainly challenges us, doesn't it? Challenges us to look beyond the surface of our everyday experiences and consider the profound, often hidden influence of something as fundamental as our money.
It definitely gives you a different lens to look through.
What stands out to you listening to this from his perspective? Do you see echoes of this fiat contagion, as he might call it, in your own life or in the world around you?
It makes you think about incentives, that's for sure.
And if so, what personal steps might you consider taking towards self-sovereignty and embracing responsibility, as Song suggests? It's not necessarily about adopting his entire worldview, but maybe just considering the questions he raises.
Yeah.
As he provocatively concludes, fiat delenda est. Fiat must be destroyed. It's certainly a powerful idea to chew on and reflect upon, regardless of where you land on it.
It's a very strong closing statement from him.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us on this fascinating deep dive. We hope it sparks some new insights or questions for you.
Hope so too.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep digging deeper.